Over the past few years, budget 3D printers have really come a long way. From their reliability and overall just ease of use, it is insane how far we've come. A few years ago, with the introduction of aluminum extrusions in budget 3D printers, it really was a game changer because previously to that, most budget 3D printers were using acrylic frames or wood frames, and on a lot of them, if you removed a print or even in some cases looked at the printer wrong, you would throw it completely out of leveling and you would skew it and things like that. Since the introduction of those printers, budget 3D printers have become more and more identical to each other, with some of them even being blatant clones of each other. Now, I'm not upset that a lot of printers are using this kind of form factor, but I'm not too crazy about testing out printers that are just blatant clones that don't seem to add any additional value or try to innovate in any way at all. That's why when LOTMAXX reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in taking a look at their new SC10 printer, I saw a CR20 and wasn't crazy about that. However, after talking with them and looking over the machine, there's quite a few things that are actually different, which was enough for me to kind of be intrigued and want to see how this printer performed for myself. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at the LOTMAXX SC10. We're going to talk about some of those differences. We're going to talk about my experience with this 3D printer. And of course, we're going to do some 3D printing. So I hope you guys are excited for today's video. Let's get into it. Now again, looking at the printer right away, it does look a lot like a CR20, and that's because a lot of the machine is a lot like a CR20. However, there are some pretty big differences in features that this machine offers that the CR20 does not have. So for starters, this machine has a filament runout sensor. Now, this is not a feature that I use very often, so to me when I see a filament runout sensor, either do or do not have it on the machine, it's never that big of a deal, but there have been a few times where I've printed really big prints and it's come in clutch, or for times when I want to use the end of a bunch of short spools and just kind of, use up 3 or 4 spools with just a little bit left in them. Having a filament runout sensor makes it really nice to hit print. Once the filament runs out, you swap in the next color and continue on with your print. So that's the first difference. The second difference is that on the CR20, it has a pretty cheapy plastic extruder, the arm and the overall assembly. On the LOTMAXX SC10, the extruder is completely metal. It's actually made out of aluminum, so it's much more rigid and to me just overall a nicer extruder and definitely an upgrade from the one that comes on the CR20. So for whatever reasoning, the LOTMAXX SC10 is advertised at having a build volume of 235 by 235 by 280, but the bed on it, when you get it, says 250 by 250 by 280, and after measuring it, it's certainly a 250 by 250 by 280. So it's also an inch bigger in X, Y, and Z than the CR20, which, again, not a huge difference, but for some people that really want to be able to have that additional build volume or have a certain project in mind that just requires it to be exactly this, this size or this form factor, then there you go. You got an extra inch in build volume now that you can work with. This printer also has a really, really nice touchscreen. The CR20 uses kind of a dial with a screen that you browse through, and although it works, don't get me wrong, it is fully functional, and I don't have much bad in regards to its overall use. Touchscreens to me are a lot nicer if they're implemented correctly. Now I've seen quite a few 3D printers with menus that are touchscreens and they're really hard to touch, and hit different menu buttons, and they don't really respond very well. And in those situations, I'd rather have just a scroll wheel because I know that I can scroll, I can feel it, and I can click. However, on the SC10, it's got this really kind of cool retro-y green touchscreen LCD screen, and it works incredibly well. This is, to me, for a budget 3D printer, this is a top-notch touchscreen. And again, as far as functionality goes, it's gonna do about the same as what the old scroll wheel kind can do, but I like touchscreens, and I think that a lot of people do, and if you have the option between a scroll wheel and a touchscreen that works pretty dang well, I think that most people also would like a touchscreen. Could be wrong, let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, it's a 24-volt system, and the hot end is almost identical to that of the CR20. Now, over the past couple of videos, I've had quite a few people that want me to sort of pop the hood on the 3D printer to take a look at the wiring, the power supply, the electronics, and things like that. And I've gotten enough demand that I said, to hell with it, I'm gonna try my best to start doing that. So with this printer, I went ahead and I removed the bottom panel for all of you guys, and I was pleasantly surprised by what I found. The wires were routed really nicely. It actually has a Meanwell 350 watt power supply, which that wasn't in the listing from what I saw. So I was not expecting a brand name power supply. And again, that is a nice additional feature to have. It's also rocking a 32-bit processor, which I didn't see that in the advertisement, as well as TMC 2208 stepper motor drivers for the X and Y axis. The Z-axis and the extruder are using the cheaper, more traditional A4988 drivers, but again, it's using 2208s for the X and Y axis, which means that the motion on this printer is really, really quiet. And again, I have no idea why this stuff's not in the listing. I certainly think that 32-bit and TMC 2208 should be in a listing somewhere, but again, it was really nice and surprising to see that. Definitely the loudest thing on this printer is going to be the fans, a combination of the hot end and part cooling fan, as well as there's a blower fan actually down below that's just blowing cool air across the main board. So those are what create the most sound. And again, maybe that's something you might want to, if complete silence is something you're going after, then you likely would want to upgrade the fans to maybe some with better bearings, or if you can find Noctuas or something of that nature. But for me, it's not bad at all compared to a lot of other printers that I've used. As far as the build plate goes, it's a aluminum build plate using kind of a BuildTak style sheet that's on sort of a flexible board. It's held in place by 4 clips, so it's kind of a flex plate system. I mean, it is a flex plate system, but not a magnetic flex plate system. So it's not as convenient. You don't just, get to pull off the magnet, flex it, and then slap it back on. You have to unclip the 4 clips, put them to the side, then flex it off. But honestly, not the worst stock build plate setup. It was pretty effective. The SC10 showed up in a relatively large box. It was completely encased with black foam, which was nice. I think that they probably use more foam than most printers I've seen, and it's always nice to make sure that the printer arrives without any damage. It did come with also a small roll of white PLA, about 250 grams, which isn't huge, but with a lot of budget 3D printers not including anything, or just having a tiny little coil that's not really good for anything other than like a 20-20-20 calibration cube, the little spool of filament was nice, and it's enough to at least allow you to play around and do a couple of small prints. As far as assembly goes, it really doesn't get much easier unless you've got a printer that's just pull out of the box and ta-da, it's ready. There was 2 screws on the left and 2 screws on the right that basically bolt the top assembly to the bottom assembly. And then you've got 2 screws on top which allow you to mount the filament holder on top of the main frame of the printer. Other than that, a couple of quick clips of the stepper motors and some of the filament runout sensors, and you are off to the races. Now this printer does not have auto bed leveling, which to me, I could care less. I just talked about this in my last video or the video before that manual leveling to me is no big deal. It's got really nice big knobs that make it incredibly easy to tune the leveling on your printer. So I went ahead and grabbed a piece of paper and jogged through the menu. It's got the option to click on 5 points where the head will basically move to the back left, back right, forward left, forward right, and center. So I took a piece of paper and just made sure that I had the correct leveling on that, and then I was ready to do some printing. Lately, I've been doing a lot of test prints that start off with me using a file that's already on the card. I actually didn't do that with this printer. I'm not really sure why, but I just was confident enough in this printer that I said, I'm not gonna even mess around with that. I'm gonna hop straight over to Cura. I'm gonna slice my own file, and I'm just gonna kind of go big with the print. Now over on Twitter, I follow a bunch of different 3D modeling artists, and I'm always drooling over their designs and seeing other people's prints of them. So in today's video, I went ahead and printed out 2 models from a very, very talented artist by the name of Fotis Mint. I have been watching his work for a really long time. He's got a Patreon where he releases awesome models on a pretty regular basis, which I'll link you down below in the description in case you want to follow him or support him on Patreon to get some of those models. But the first print I did was his Davy Jones model. I went ahead and dragged it into Cura. I didn't do any scaling at all, and I actually used just the default Ender profile, or the CR20 profile that's built into Cura now, and all I did was change the bed so that it's to 250 by 250 by 280, and I didn't play around with any other settings. Because of the fact that the extruder is so close, the Bowden tube length's about the same, and the hot end is nearly identical, I figured that the stock settings for the CR20 or the Ender 3 printer that were in Cura would be totally fine, and as you'll see in a second here, they absolutely were. So I dragged in his Davy Jones model, I sliced it at 200 microns, and I hit print. I watched the first few layers go down successfully, and I basically let the printer do its thing. And 8 to 10 hours later, I came back and was totally blown away by the print that was sitting there on the bed. It looked perfect. Now, I've been really spoiled with doing a lot of resin 3D printing, and for small figures and busts like that, the detail you can get on a resin printer is certainly unmatched. However, considering that this was just a stock $260 currently on Amazon FDM printer with no tuning, just default profile, printing this model and seeing the level of detail I was able to hit, I was completely blown away. I think that this model turned out amazing, and I really couldn't be happier. All the little detail on like kind of the coral on his shoulder and on the head, and all of the kind of texture and things like that, like it just, the tentacles, it turned out so good. I was pumped to do some more printing. The next model I printed was also from Photosmint, and it was Ryuk from Death Note. I saw this model posted a few months back on Twitter, and I've been jonesing to get this print going, and I finally decided that this is the time, this is the printer, I'm gonna do it. I went ahead and busted out some of my stash of Polyalchemy Elixir filament, which I got as a gift from my buddy Chris for my birthday last year, and I've been saving this for very, very special occasions. And so I went ahead and chose to print out the model that was split into two, so that way it would be a little bit quicker each part, and I can go a little bit bigger, and it just seemed more simplified for needing to use supports and things like that. So I printed the base, which took about 16 hours, again at same default scale that it imported into Cura. I printed the top, which took about another 10 hours, and once again, I was just blown away. This is probably one of my favorite prints that I've ever done, and I've done a lot of 3D printing, and I've been pretty stoked on tons of them, but a combination of the filament, the insane model that Photosmint created, and just the level of detail that the SC10 was able to capture, it blew my mind. I seriously cannot believe how far budget 3D printers have come. From 2014 when I got my first printer and what I saw come off the plate and considered acceptable to what is now coming off a machine, just, you know, again, sub $300, no tweaking, no tuning, it is incredible. And anybody that's been 3D printing for an extended period of time, like 2014, 2015 area, maybe even 2016, will tell you the same thing, that over the last 4 years, it has just come so far. It is incredible. So after printing those two prints, I decided let's do something with a little bit more just kind of simplistic organic shape. I found a vase over on Thingiverse. I loaded up some red PETG. I sliced it in Cura just using vase mode, so it's just a base, and then an outer perimeter, which printed in about 8 hours, I want to say, and it looked really, really good. I did goof a bit though, and because of how much PETG likes to stick to the base of this, when I went to flex the part off, the part did pop right off, but it popped off without its base. It literally just split perfectly and left the base on the build plate. So it's not much of a vase anymore. It's more of like a tunnel, but at least goes to show the level of consistency of laying down layers continuously, and the fact again that it's able to work with PETG if that's a filament that you decide you want to be printing with. Now the last two prints I printed were actually practical prints. I've kind of got this weird torn self where part of me likes to print pretty awesome looking things, and then another part of me likes to print just functional stuff. And so I had to kind of fill both of those itches. I'd already done the pretty stuff, and now it was time to do some functional stuff. So I found a really simple gauge over on Thingiverse that allows you to measure metric screws as well as their length. So it's got holes where you can push them through and see whether it's an M2, M3, M4, M5, so on and so forth. And it's also got a ruler that allows you to measure the overall length of it. And originally I printed it out in just a white PLA. It looked fine, but seeing the actual writing that was on the print was tough. Like you had to kind of turn it, or you know, the light, you could see it, but it just didn't pop out at you like I wanted. So I went ahead and reprinted it in white, and then paused the print right when it got to the text portion and the ruler line portion, swapped it out for some black PLA, let it finish up those final 5 or 6 layers, and it is just way better. It's so much more, it's so much easier to see the numbers. It's just overall to me improved the use that it's going to get, because with the white one it's like, yeah, it works, or with the single color one it works, but just being able to see it really easily from far away I think is awesome. And I definitely think that if this is something you find useful, you should probably print one out for yourself. And the last thing I printed out was just another simple clamp that I found online. I kind of figured that you can never have enough clamps in a lot of my laser projects that require me to glue things together, or CNC stuff. You can never have too many clamps, and even small clamps are really useful for some of the stuff that I do. And I figured it would be also a good use case to print out and see how well the threads worked after being printed. And so I printed the pieces out, threaded the part through and popped on the tiny little cap on the end of it, and it threaded like butter. So the printer did a fantastic job of getting the detail and the tolerances, and whoever modeled it obviously also did a great job of getting those offsets or tolerances correct, so that way an FDM printer can print it out and have a part that you know, works really well. So if you guys can't already tell, yes, I am very pumped on this machine. When I originally saw it, I just saw, again, another clone, which it does carry over a lot of the same things of the CR20, but the improvements that it's made to me are pretty awesome, and I actually really like them. I think that they did enough changes to make this what I would consider an improvement over the CR20 design. Now, if I were to nitpick though, there is one thing that is kind of a bit bothersome about this printer, which is a super easy fix, and if you purchase it, it would probably take you 30 minutes, if that, to fix it. But that's the part cooling. So the part cooling fan is fine. It's a, you know, like kind of blower style fan that blows down through a fan shroud that then targets towards the nozzle. It is clearly way too high, and the air that's blowing out of there is just going directly into the heater block and not actually hitting the nozzle or the part that you're printing. And so for PLA, for the quality that you want to be able to achieve and for the bridging you want to be able to do in overhangs, having that cooling is very important. And so all they really need to do is come up with a new design for that fan shroud that extends it just, you know, half inch, quarter inch, really, not half inch, quarter inch, and it would be perfect. And there's definitely plenty of models online, because they're not the first manufacturer that's done the fan shroud for that type of fan just off. But again, hopefully, and I will give them some feedback, that is something that they can implement in printers going forward, because the fan shroud, the design of it just being a simple down arc is fine, but again, like the length of it is just totally off. So that's one thing that I think that is, again, you could totally print out a replacement one, but it's something that's definitely a flaw on this printer. In all seriousness, if you're looking to pick up another 3D printer at right now around 260 bucks on Amazon, I think this is a fantastic machine. So like if you're looking to get into 3D printing, if you're looking to add another machine to your lineup, I know that right now a lot of people have been printing out and there seems to be a shortage of a lot of printers, and certainly like CR20 style machines and Ender 3s and things like that are hard to come by. Well, this is not too far off as far as pricing goes. It's actually cheaper than a CR20, but pricier than an Ender 3. It's kind of in that midpoint, but I do think that this is a very good option to have. It is really nice to have this printer as another available option for people that are looking to get into 3D printing, or again, expanding their kind of budget printer farm. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Again, I did my best to cover as much as I possibly could and give you guys as much detail as possible. If you do want to find out more or purchase one for yourself, of course, links will be in the description down below. Don't forget to smack the like button if you watch the video, and subscribe. I make a video every single Saturday, so you've got something to look forward to every single week. A lot of reviews and tutorials, tips, tricks, and projects I'm working on. And if you do want to support the channel even more so, I'll place links down below for my Patreon. It all goes to just helping out with supplies and allowing me to spend more time doing this, which is creating awesome content for you guys that I really enjoy doing. So on that note, I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. This has been Daniel from ModBot, and I'm out. Peace, guys.